Engineering. I'm a consultant engineer working with the city on this French Prairie Pathway project. I'm here with Carla Isiordia, also from Wallis Engineering, and then from the city, Nancy Crushauer and Jake Weigel, and Zach Weigel. Well, I'm a little proud. Get a little proud. So, yeah, again, thank you to everybody for coming out. I have a short presentation, maybe 15, maybe 20 minutes, to go through our survey results and talk about what we're going to do next, what our next steps on this project are. At the end, we'll have an opportunity for people to ask questions, so if you don't mind holding your questions till the very end, that'd be appreciated. Also, after this, we're going to put the video and the PowerPoint presentation out to the community, so if you have any friends and neighbors that are not here, seems to be a surprise, there's a lot of people here. Anybody that's not here, you can send out the video and share it with them. So first off, I wanted to go back and talk about what the project goals were when we started this project. The project started in essence with the community reaching out to the city and saying, you know, we have this problem on French Prairie. We've got an issue where people are walking in the roadway and there's not a safe, dedicated space for everyone and all users. And so from that, we came forward with a project goal to improve safety for pedestrians especially and cyclists, get a route on French Prairie that works for all users, and in that effort balance the safety, cost, and community character that makes Charbonneau and French Prairie especially what it is today. So we issued a survey last November, and as part of that survey effort, we asked you to review 4 different design options and rate how well you felt each of those options met the community needs. And then oh, can everybody silence their phones? That's okay. Rank each of those options against each other, and then we offered an opportunity for people to provide additional comments. And I was honestly blown away by the number of responses. We got 243 individual submissions, either written or through the online portal. The other thing that was really impressive, yeah, Nancy has a copy of all the survey respondents. 2 copies, if people want to look at them afterwards.
Or I'll leave one of these at the desk at the activity center. I'll leave 2 of them. And that way you can take the time, but I give you every single comment. And
what she's saying is that we have every single comment that was submitted through written or through the portal?
Just oral.
Oh, just the online comments?
Just the website.
Online comments are here. If people want to look at what was received by the city after we're done, we have 2 binders full of comments. But I wanted to applaud you and commend you for a lot of very thoughtful responses and written correspondence to the team. We read every comment and took our time to kind of analyze and get an understanding of how the project would affect each and every one of you personally. So we appreciate how much time and effort you spent submitting that information. Now, while there's some disagreement, let's say, in the community about how to go forward, I wanted to reinforce that there was a commonality among all of you. We did see that over and over again, everybody wants this to be a safe option for pedestrians. We want this to be safe. It's just how we go about that is the challenge for this particular project. So I want to go back and talk about the options that we presented just to refresh everybody's memory. It's been a while. Option 1 was our option where we kept the vehicular lanes untouched. We added shared use lane markings for bicyclists on the outside lanes, and then the intent of this project and the bulk of the cost was going to be extending our pathway around to the ends at Miley Road. The people who really liked this option thought it was the safest for pedestrians and walkers. They liked that it had dedicated separated lanes for cars and people, and they thought it was the best long-term solution for community safety. People who were against this option thought it was too expensive and the cost was prohibitive. They didn't like that the tree removals associated with the path extension might damage, the character of Charbonneau. They didn't like the shared use lane markings and felt that those were unsafe for bicyclists, especially in bad weather and leaves on the ground kind of conditions. Common themes that we heard about this one, people were asking for clarity on the cost and funding sources. And now for reference on this one, we had estimated the cost somewhere between $1.5 and $2 million. Also for reference, the city has funding available on the order of $200,000 citywide for these types of improvements. So you can kind of see the challenge we're looking at here. Other common themes, the concerns about maintenance vehicles and how they're gonna park and access areas on French Prairie, and then specific requests for pedestrian safety at intersections, including crosswalks and signage in those locations. Now option 2, this was our shared use path option where we rededicated the outside lanes in each direction and gave that over to separated bike and ped spaces. The people who really liked this option thought it was a reasonable compromise and it kept traffic flowing. They appreciated that it was a lower cost option and would be faster to implement, and that it preserved the trees and minimized the disruption to the community. People who did not like this option thought that the pedestrians were still too close to vehicles and they didn't think that painted lines would be enough. They didn't like the idea of having golf carts mixing with cars that could cause some hazards and slow traffic. And again, leaves and maintenance vehicles blocking lanes was another concern. Common themes within the written responses that we saw was a real desire for that physical separation between cars and pedestrians. People wanted clear signage and enforcement of speed limits. There were questions about how people might access this shared use path, specifically people with mobility devices. And there were questions about whether or not, what the intent was going to be with the existing pathway. For reference, on this particular option, there wasn't going to be an extension of the existing pathway, but the existing pathway would be continually required to be maintained as ADA requirements triggered upgrades to those facilities. Now, option 3, this option was what we'll call our modal separation option, where we shifted all the vehicles to one side of French Prairie Road and dedicated the other side of French Prairie Road to 2 dedicated bike golf cart lanes in each direction and 1 8-foot space for pedestrians. People who liked this option thought it was the safest option and it completely separated vehicles from pedestrians. They liked that it protected the trees, could be implemented quickly, and they felt that it addressed a lot of the pedestrian needs for the community. People who didn't like this option thought it was too complicated and the design might be confusing. They were worried about head-on collisions with 2-way traffic on one side, and again worried about emergency and service vehicle access being compromised by this condition. So some of the common themes that we heard on this option, people wanted barriers at the entrances to make sure that nobody went the wrong way into these spaces. There are a lot of questions about the cost and the timelines. And then people had mixed feelings about sharing golf carts and bikes in the same space. Our final option was option 4. This was kind of our hybrid solution where we incorporated the shared use path lanes along a portion of French Prairie Drive and then left the full vehicle lanes on the ends as we got close to Miley Road. People who liked this option thought it was a creative solution. They liked that it connected to French Prairie without major tree impacts, and it kept pedestrians away from the main traffic areas. People who didn't like this option, the opponents thought golf carts, again, in the vehicle lanes might slow traffic. It was too complicated and could confuse people, and it still relied on that painted separation in some areas of the shared use path. Common themes we heard with this option was again a desire for clear signage and that physical separation, concerns about the cost versus the benefits of this particular option, and questions again about how this might affect emergency vehicle access. So we took our scores, our scoring from the community, and applied a metric to those to get us some kind of a rough scoring to those. And option 1 came out as the favorite option, but it was very close. Option 1 and 2 landed fairly similar, and it varied between, there was very strong feelings for keeping the vehicle lanes against very strong feelings for that rededication of vehicle lanes to bikes and peds. The other thing that we noticed in the written responses was that maybe there was a confusion, or people were unsure about how some of these alternative options might feel and work in the real world. So we as a design team, we had a bit of a conundrum on our hands. So now what? Now what do we do? So while 1 and 2 were preferred but split, we wanted to look at this again from the city's perspective. Option 1 being the favorite of the community by vote was still also the most expensive and the most difficult for us to put forward and fund. And as such, it would take the longest amount of time to actually complete. The other issue from the city perspective is that option 1 didn't provide what's constituted as an all ages and abilities bike facility. Now, that is an aspirational goal of the city when we're trying to put in new bike facilities in the community. And that is, in essence, a bike facility that is usable by even the least experienced bicyclists who would feel safe in that context. And then again, from the Charbonneau perspective, from what we had heard in the earlier surveys, option 1 and its impact to trees seemed to have some very real challenges associated with it and how that would impact the community. And then it also didn't address some of the speeding concerns that had been flagged by the residents along French Prairie. So how do we resolve this conundrum? How do we get there from here? So we have discussed with the city the idea of implementing a demonstration project. So one of the great benefits of French Prairie Road is it allows us to trial out some of these shared use path options using low cost traffic control type techniques. And so we are proposing just that, a demonstration project to give the community an opportunity to see what it feels like in the real world. So we've picked April 24th to May 1st for this demonstration project. It's going to be limited to from the village, right over here, around to Armitage Road. It's going to be just temporary signage, striping. It's going to feel a lot like a construction zone, with cones and barrels separating vehicles from the bikes and peds in that shared use space. We're going to maintain access for driving, walking, and biking, and give you guys an opportunity to experience one of those layouts and see if it really is, as bad or as good as you think it was. And then provide us that feedback that maybe will give us the opportunity to say, okay, now we have a preferred favorite to push forward to the next step. Again, I wanted to reiterate that we, as the design team in the city, we don't have a permanent decision yet. We're waiting. We want you guys to come to us with your preferred alternative. So from here on out, our next steps is this demonstration project. I have traffic control plans that show what that's going to look like if you're a plan reading kind of person. I think I see somebody diving into them right over here. I've got some laid out on the back table. There are a few copies floating around. You're welcome to look at those and ask any questions on that. Give you an opportunity to experience that layout and provide feedback. Once we have that feedback in place, our intent is to review the feedback, evaluate how the demonstration project worked in the real world and evaluate that performance, and then determine a final direction based on what we hear. And hopefully by the summer of this year, we'll have a preferred alternative that we can put forward to the Charbonneau board as well as the city council to move forward to the next step, find a way to fund it and make it happen. So that's it in a nutshell. I wanted to thank you guys for coming out. It's a really impressive turnout again. And if you have, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, great. Back there? No. Okay, so first of all, regarding this demonstration project, there will be, we have like yard signs along the way that has a QR code on it where you can click on the QR code using your phone, your photograph on the phone, and then it'll have like some questions you can reply to, and that will go to the city's website. Now, for those of you that aren't, QR codes are sort of a pain in the butt, we're going to put those questions on the city website, and I'm also going to have paper copies of those questions at the activity center, just like we did for the survey. So there will be both QR type website options and manual paper options to provide the feedback to the questions on the demonstration project. Okay. And then also, just go back a couple slides to the check boxes.
This one?
That one. I don't know, we try to summarize what the original goals of the project were. And what we heard, I don't remember which meeting or how many meetings ago it was, but, or through emails, website, whatever, but the really important goals of this project were to protect the trees, provide bicycle facilities for all ages, address speeding concerns, which is still very hard to do. It's driver driven, let me tell you. And then improve pathway accessibility for everybody, regular, people that can get around just fine and those who need mobility devices. And then also we realized that for all of the maintenance vehicles that are out on French Prairie Road every day, and fire trucks, emergency vehicles, we need to make sure they have very usable use of the road. So that's where you see all these check marks. Red means not really, green means great, and yellow means, pretty good. All right.
Okay. Do we have questions?
Yeah.
Do we have questions?
Do you guys think you can speak loud enough if you ask your question? Otherwise, I'll pass the mic.
Yes, pass the mic.
Dave, during the test week, which option will be out on the road?
Oh, great question. Yeah, so this is going to look a lot like option 2.
Go back to that page.
Let's go back. So you can kind of, well, maybe you can't see it there, but we'll have a vehicle lane in each direction with a traffic barrel separating the vehicle lanes from what's going to be the shared use path. There'll be some additional cones at the entrances and exits of the shared use path space, as well as some signage as you kind of enter and exit into these things.
What happened to option 0, the no build option? When I look at this problem in the first place, it looks like there's no traffic there other than a few cars and a few pedestrians and maybe a golf cart now and then. But it's designed like a boulevard. It gives access to those of us who want to get to our house or go to the center, a place to go on a reasonably fast road and then cut over. I don't see the need for this at all, and I'm wondering just how they came up with this without recognizing the fact that this is something that few people really need.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And we'd actually talked a little bit about this before this meeting about, is there a no-build option? And from the city's perspective, I mean, sure, there's a no-build option, but the challenge we see from the city side is it doesn't achieve what the goals of the project were from the get-go, and it doesn't remove what was, in our perception, the friction of the safety issue, right? We still would have people walking in the street, and I think that was kind of one of the catalysts of what this project got started on.
It's more of an age factor than.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to just say quickly too is, the city didn't take on this project to do nothing. However, if that's what happens, that's what happens. But our project is to look at alternatives and see if there's one that could successfully meet the goals, which were to provide safer pedestrian facilities along French Prairie Road.
When my husband and I walk, he uses when my husband and I walk, he uses a mobility, like a scooter. And we find ourselves out in the road on this scooter because he cannot use the paths because they're bumpy and it just doesn't work for the scooter. I see a wheelchair up there and that is encouraging. So for us, yeah, walking in the road and the wheelchair is a change for us is necessary.
I think the idea would be mobility devices would be encouraged to use the pedestrian pathway part of the lane for this demonstration project. We'll see how it turns out. See, there's somebody back here.
I'm just curious why you chose option 2 to demonstrate versus option 3, which checked like all of the green boxes.
So that's a good question. Option 3 creates a lot of additional traffic control challenges, shifting everybody to one side of the road and the other. The other reason we went with option 2 is it scored better than option 3. And we, instead of doing 2 different demonstration projects, to trial both of them out, which maybe is the way you as a community decide you want to go. But, we have budget for 1 demonstration project, so we picked what was going to be, in essence, the highest scoring, best scoring option.
Can we see that slide again?
Could you provide the criteria for what you're going to use after the demonstration project, and whether this will be a singular demonstration project or whether you're going to have other options?
We're in essence intending to propose a singular demonstration project. We have, in essence, 1 question that's going to be part of the feedback to this, with also an option to provide some written feedback, which is, do you prefer this option? Does it change, did you change your mind? And is that going to give us, guidance? What was?
I can pull it.
Pull up the actual questions.
Can you go back to the slide with the checks?
Checks. Yeah.
Back to, I just want to add a little bit to that too, and
Sure.
I mean, we saw a split opinion from this group, and so we have a conundrum. We have like a huge issue to figure out, and so we are not sure what we're going to do next, but trying part of option 2 seemed to be a reasonable approach for the next step. And then after that, we'll see where that takes us. But it could be that we have to end up with a compromise. And whether or not that would be accepted by the community or not, we don't know. But with such a divided feedback, I mean, we're in a really kind of a tough spot in terms of finding an engineer recommendation for this project that meets the community's desires.
What if you went to option 0 once again, change the speed limit to 20 miles an hour, put in about 4 more stop signs along the way? That would slow traffic down to the walkers, that'd slow traffic down to the riders, that'd slow traffic down to the cars. There's a lot of difference between getting hit 25 miles an hour and getting hit by 20 miles an hour. Both will kill you, but one's not as bad.
That's a good question. We've actually talked about this.
There also has to be some common sense.
I'll let Zach. Sure.
Yeah, again, my name is Zach Weigel. Can you hear me all right? Okay. So just because you post a street at 20 miles an hour doesn't mean people drive 20 miles an hour, right? So one of the goals of the project was to look at how to reduce. Louder! One of the goals of the project was to look at how to reduce vehicle speed, right? That was one of the goals established from the early questionnaire that was sent out. One of the best ways to do that is to narrow travel lanes, right? So also adding stop signs doesn't mean people stop at them. It gives people a false sense of security that people are going to stop at that stop sign. What happens is when you have a stop sign where it's not warranted, people roll through them. They don't stop at them. So that's why we only put in stop signs when they're warranted.
And by the way, that information that Zach is quoting is really based on a ton of data that the Federal Highway Administration has collected across the country. ODOT has collected across Oregon. So what he's saying, we've got the data to back it up.
Now go to the other side.
Would speed humps slow people down?
Speed humps do slow people down, but the context is not generally right for speed humps on French Prairie Road, and we typically, as engineers, don't install speed bumps on collectors.
Right, some of the issue is speed bumps, and speed bumps have changed throughout the years, so I don't want to say something that's necessarily generic for all communities. However, sometimes with speed bumps, you kind of go slow and then you speed up to the next one. They also can be kind of noisy, and as I heard a groan through the room, I'm not sure if they'd be very popular. But we can always ask again.
I hear the zero, the do nothing option. I don't think that's reasonable from my point of view, because what I see is more and more walkers and runners, with or without critters, 1 by 1, 2 by 2 in the street. And that's not even mobility devices. The second thing I see is more and more people speeding. I set my cruise control on 25. More and more often I'm passed at a 25-mile-an-hour speed by people who can't wait. So I used to live in Northwest Portland. When we narrowed streets, we had that calming effect that didn't involve destroying cars or trees. So there's all that. The third thing is, when I look at the cost option, option 2, that money's gotta come from somewhere. And if I heard you correctly at the beginning, City of Wilsonville doesn't have money for it. So if something happens, no matter what, who pays for this? Do we pay for this?
So at the end of this project, it's a good question. At the end of this project, the goal is we present to the council and the board, Charbonneau board, a preferred option. And then at that point, the city council can look for ways to fund that project. Now we have 200,000 citywide for sidewalk projects. Per year, citywide. But there's other funding mechanisms that might be able to do something like this.
Oh, don't count out ODOT. I think they're still working on getting their money. Okay, there was somebody else over here.
If you narrow the road down to 2 lanes on one side of the divider, will that not hinder police, traffic, ambulances? It get pretty crowded, I would think. I do a lot of walking around here almost daily, and I hesitate walking on the sidewalk because the sidewalks, most of them are not in very good condition. So I walk on the road. So I'd appreciate some way to walk on the road safely, away from the cars.
Yeah, so we do have some concerns about how the modal split option might have impact. Obviously, it's going to be a little tighter for vehicles on that side of the road. But I don't know that I see much difference for emergency vehicle access between options 2, 3, or 4. It should be fairly similar.
I think when I've spoken to firefighters, they kind of say, we'll find a way. They could end up using the other 2 lanes, for all we know. It's just, how can I get there? And they've got lots of emergency, lots of sirens, lots of lights to kind of let people know they're coming. But I think that's something that we've considered greatly as we've looked at all of the input, and we realize that's an important factor.
Thank you. I have a question about option 1. Earlier, a question was raised about protecting trees, and I'm talking about the area from Country View on around to Miley Road, the idea of extending the walking path there. And I submitted dimensions from the measurements from the curb to the fence line, showing that there's more than ample room to put a pathway there. And especially since the amount of space and the fact that it's on the uphill side, I would dispute the idea that it would damage trees in that area. Maybe we could talk about with an arborist or something about that. The other thing, I also submitted a suggestion that you, with the pathway down the center of the median, that you figure out a way to bypass where it drops down to the golf path and back up golf cart path. And I saw a map that indicated maybe you were considering that as an option, but the map that I saw showed that you were going to perhaps bypass to the south side rather than the north side. And I want you to know that if you go to the south, your path would be about 222 feet long, and it would have a 4.5-foot rise to get up to that level, whereas on the north side, it would only be a 162-foot path, and you wouldn't have the rise. So I hope, if you're considering, as I hope you do, bypassing that big dip with a walking path, that you would go to the north. My other question has to do, if you do all this stuff in the street, do you then remove or stop maintaining the walking path that's currently in the median and along the north side of, between there and Country View, in which case you create more of a hazard than maintaining it? So those are some of my questions. Thank you.
Okay, let me go back to the start. The first question that I heard was about the space for the existing pathway extension and impacts to trees. We did look at where, I think I did look at your comment and where that path might land. There are a lot of surface routes in that space that we have some concerns over how that might impact those existing trees. There's also a lot of slope, side slope to that area, so some grading would have to be done. But the bigger impact to trees was not necessarily in that path space. It was as the path comes down to meet the road grade. And so in that transition, that has some specific slope requirements to meet ADA compliance. And so it was very impactful to get that pathway down from those elevated positions down to the street level to allow for people to cross at grade. So that was question number one. Question number two, yes, we're looking at, and I believe, and we have a graphic, I think I still have it here, that we put out in one of the earlier surveys about rerouting around the tunnel. And that would be part of the pathway improvements for option one, so that we do provide an accessible route through the space. There's no real good way for us to improve that dip and make it compliant without massive expenditure. So I appreciate the idea of going around the north side. I think when we looked at it, the south side looked, the most viable. But if it's an option, we'll take a look at the north side as well. I totally forgot what your third question was.
Will you continue to maintain the existing or take them out?
Right, so the existing sidewalk path wouldn't be upgraded as part of the improvement project per se, but it would still be required to be upgraded when it was, so for ADA compliance, there are certain triggers within the development and construction community that say, okay, if you do this work, you must upgrade your pathways or any sidewalk facility that it touches to ADA compliance. That would still be a trigger for that existing pathway area. But in the short term, in the short run, the intent would be for those to be kind of just maintained per usual as the city's doing them now.
Just one cut. Within the last 2 years, you improved the section from the four-way stop clear back to Mighty Road by just doing an overlay, and that greatly improved the safety and walkability of that part of the path. Are you saying that that's not something that you're allowed to do for?
I'm not saying we're not allowed to do it, and Zach maybe might go a little bit deeper into that particular improvement project we weren't associated with. But it's kind of separate from what we're proposing here. It would be part of option one, improving the pathway network to make it ADA compliant. But for the other ones where we have an alternative pathway to get people to and from, it wouldn't be necessarily required as part of that project.
Yeah, actually, Paul asked most of my questions. I just have one question. Is option two similar to the town center loop?
Yes, similar. I mean, there's no pedestrian space on town center loop that I'm aware of. It's a buffered bike lane. There's sidewalks, so it'd be different in that regard. You don't have that elevated difference between the sidewalk and the bike lane, as opposed to town center loop.
Without a curve.
What's that?
The barrier
Oh,
in the buffer, but not between the sidewalk and the bike lane.
So also in option two, they're based on engineering knowledge, and also what we heard from the community would be there would be some sort of physical or invisible delineator between the travel lane for the vehicle and the bicycle lane and the pedestrian lane would be striped different. So there would be, it would look different than Town Center Loop because that just has striping. They'll have some sort of delineators. I'm gonna go to the back now.
Poles?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Target.
Southeast Portland.
So my question is, I have a slightly different question. So in the opinion of city staff and engineering staff, which of the options improves pedestrian and bicycle safety the most?
That's a good question. And honestly, there's probably a little bit of a debate within our engineering and design community. I don't know that I want to necessarily color this with my personal opinions. I don't know if Zach, you want to jump in with your personal opinions, but let's just say there's some debate within our group as well as what might be the best option.
Because I'm curious, we're talking about opinions of our community, which I agree with, in terms of percentage, what percent wants option 1, 2, but seems to me we're missing the real question and for our analysis, and that's which is the most effective for improving safety. And then we can talk about which of the options.
I do feel like all of the options improve pedestrian safety to some extent. I think at this point, it's a matter of responding to the concerns we heard about each option and the questions, and then also figuring out the financing part. I mean, if we just can't afford one, what do we do? Like, save up for 30 years and then build it? Maybe it would be 10 years, I can't say. In fact, I'll get in trouble if I say how many years it might take. But what I really don't think we would have given you an option to
Yes,
do
exactly.
to improve pedestrian safety to some extent. So that's the bottom line. And there is some discrepancy, and I think we need more steps to continue our work. Let's see, you were.
Yes, my question is, we live on French Prairie, and I see continually going by our house sweeper trucks, I see trash trucks, I see people parking who are working on the trees, clearing things, blowing stuff out into the lane. If you have one lane each way, where are these vehicles going to park? Are they going to park and block the walking lane? They can't possibly park and block the only car lane that's there, in which case you're going to continually have people driving around. Plus, for those of us like we do, we have our driveway where you have to cross over the road to get into the house, and I would hate to think that that's going to be blocked with this kind of traffic.
Sure. So with regard to maintenance and vehicle access and what I foresee, for instance, like option 2, in option 2 or 4, where we have that shared use path, the delineators that would separate the vehicle lanes from the bike ped space would have gaps in it, and my assumption would be that the maintenance vehicles will pull into that space, park, turn on their flashers, do maintenance, and then pull back out into the vehicle lane when they're done.
Well, that works for some, but the trash trucks have to stay in the lane to pick up the trash. The people who have the sweeper truck have to stay continually on one lane one way, and then they stay on the other lane going down. So it isn't just a question of parking. It's some of these vehicles access the whole length of the road. The mailman does that. You can't just have them cut into certain places and say that's the only place they're going to work.
Well, from my understanding, just my understanding real quick, is that there's only a handful of homes that actually front French Prairie. And so while I don't see it necessarily being the entire extent of French Prairie, there are little pockets where yes, they might continue, and the garbage truck driver might say, it's like another 100 feet to the next house, I'll just drive up there if it's clear and pick up the next one until it's a point where they jump back out. That's how I would see that happening.
And that, those kind of considerations occur on many local streets as well. I mean, like if you look at Villebois or you look at other neighborhoods in Wilsonville, the local streets don't have 2 lanes in each direction, and the garbage trucks have to work around the parked vehicles, have to work around people, whatever, people have stuff stacked in the road. So, but it is a concern, and we have to figure it out.
It seems to me that, my recollection is that we already had one big project a couple of years ago where they put in all new pipeline along our side of French Prairie. And it went, it seems to me, from where we live, near Riverwalk, just we're in Edgewater, toward the Country Club Estates down French Prairie. And they got all the way up to our driveway and stopped and said, okay, starting in 2024 or 5, we're gonna go from here west. And we had a couple of meetings on it because they're gonna tear up that one whole lane going that direction. So I'm curious if we're gonna have that lane closed and there's only 2-way traffic on that side of the road, we're gonna have an issue. So that got put off for funding, and it's in the works. It's work that needs to be done but hasn't been calendared. And I'm hoping that that's in effect before we start this project.
Do you want to talk funding on that one?
I don't think the question was funding. I think the question was, what do we do about traffic if we've got the lane closed and we, use one of these options? And yes, the funding was delayed, and likely we're not sure what option would be done. It depends on what the priorities are for the city engineer to get capital projects done. But I'm going to tell you that the temporary traffic control should, and I believe it will, Zach can confirm that, it will consider your access and others' access along that section of road to make sure that people can still get around. That's the whole idea. Temporary traffic control during construction is something that we look at really carefully, and it would be done for that project as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. We've heard a lot of talk about improving pedestrian safety. Has there been any kind of research done on how many incidents has there been in the last 30 years with pedestrians being hit on the roadway?
In the last 30 years? Offhand.
I've been here 24 years, and as far as I know, there's been none. So I'm concerned, is this a need or is this a want that we want right now? The second question is, on option 1, is the most expensive right now to do. Would it also be the most expensive maintaining in the years in the future? Because of the risk of bringing up the walkway and stuff?
Yeah, so I can address your first question. So members of the Charbonneau community came to City Council and said, we have a problem on French Prairie Road with people walking in the street. So the work that we're doing now is to try and find a solution to that issue that was raised. And these are the different alternatives that the project team came up with based on the questionnaire that was, that we went through about a year ago. So, obviously from the feedback that we've gotten, there's a lot of disagreement on what the solution should be, right? So I know there's a lot of people here that have strong opinions one way or the other. But that's what we're trying to work through, is what is the project to move forward.
And with regard to the cost of maintenance, so the cost that we estimated in here is mainly capital improvement costs. Maintenance would be separate and would be anticipated for all options as you go forward. Asphalt has a certain design life. The shared use path would be asphalt, and so that would need to be maintained at a certain regularity. But again, pedestrians and bike traffic on asphalt is pretty minimal impact, and so you get a lot longer life out of that. The shared use or the separated sidewalk would probably be concrete if we had the option to put concrete in. That has a very long design life. The maintenance would still be your standard maintenance of clearing materials. You have tree root intrusion issues that would need to be addressed, and that would still be part of that solution as well, but again, it's not part of our estimate.
Following up on that, on option 1, is there a possibility of modifying that, or do we have to go with the entire option 1?
Modifying, like in what sense?
Like just improving the sidewalks that people complain about are so bumpy that they can't walk on them and they have to walk in the road. I know that it doesn't go all the way around to both ends of the French Prairie, but perhaps people would be more interested in just improving the sidewalks.
So I guess that kind of goes back to our do-nothing discussion option, where improving the existing facilities that you have in your space would be the preferred alternative. That said, again, it would not address the reason why we've gone through this effort to begin with, which was to provide a safe space for pedestrians along the entire length of French Prairie Road and getting people out of the street.
To follow up on that, then, what I see is, in order to provide a safe space for pedestrians, we provide a pedestrian walkway to encourage people to walk on French Prairie, where we don't encourage it now.
Maybe I'm sorry, I'm not sure I follow.
Can we repeat that?
Sure, please.
By providing a safe space to walk on French Prairie, what we're actually doing is encouraging people to use French Prairie as a walkway, a sidewalk. While right now, many people look to the inner streets to walk on because they don't want to walk on French Prairie. If you put a pathway on French Prairie that says come one, come all to the pedestrians, we will all be out there with our golf carts and our bikes and our dogs and overfilling that space. So
I guess from my perspective, our intent is, and I think we're talking about maybe option 2 in this context, where we would rededicate half of the roadway space to bikes and peds. And I think if it encouraged a lot of people to walk in that space, I think that is part of our goal here. We're trying to separate the vehicles from the pedestrians, and that's kind of the ultimate goal of all of these options.
Hi, I guess my question is, when I look at the number of respondents, it's less than 1% of our whole population, right? We have like 2,200 people that live here and 243 people responded. I know we need to have something. However, walking on French Prairie in the middle of the road should not be acceptable. You come around a corner